Hello there. My name is Pete Alonzi, and I'm an assistant professor here in the School of Data Science. I joined the School of Data Science as a professor to focus primarily on undergraduate education. The biggest program that I'm part of launching is our new major in data science. It's a Bachelor's of Science, and it fully incorporates the principles that we have here as to what our definition of data science is, and the goal is to give the students who work on this curriculum a chance to be ready right out of the gate and to engage in the workforce as soon as they graduate. My background is coming from the world of particle physics. I went to college and then straight into grad school and got a PhD in physics, at which point I then moved on to a postdoc at the University of Washington. And in this life, I traveled to several laboratories, one in Switzerland, Vancouver, Chicago. Never quite made it to Japan, which was on my list. But then I made a pivot about 10 years ago to the field of data science, and I've been working there ever since. Initially, I was doing projects at UVA for the library involving the large data sets that they have before coming to the School of Data Science. My research interests initially focused on the fundamental nature of the universe and asking questions about the origin of matter. I did that for a while and got to the point where I was ready to transition and bring those skills to projects that impact people on a shorter time scale. And so the two main things I've got going right now focus on health in general. One, the intersection of health and the criminal justice system here in Charlottesville. That's a local project, but we reach out and get funding nationally to support the initiatives. And the other project that I'm working on is looking at pediatric heart transplantation. And we've had some success getting some funding for that, and are now trying to crack into that national level of funding to take that project to the next level. Yeah, so I'll elaborate more on the project with the criminal justice system here in Charlottesville. There's a ton of data that exists from the jail, from the courts, from probation offices, and also the associated agencies that see a lot of the same people. So the hospital's emergency department, for example, the local community service provider for things like substance abuse and mental health treatment. And for good reasons, the data is not mingled. Things are kept separate, and people aren't identified and tracked. There's a lot of data privacy and data sovereignty issues at play. But it does produce an impediment to getting prompt treatment to people at times. So the project that I'm engaged with essentially looks to find a mechanism where we can share information in a respectful way to help achieve goals to make outcomes better for individuals and the community as a whole. So for example, the process started before my involvement about 15 years ago with the simple goal of reducing the jail population. At the time, over 600 people were living at the jail on weekends. That was the peak time. And now we've gotten that number down to under 300 people who are living at the jail. And there's a whole myriad of things. I'd be happy to talk more about that, but then I'd have to get charts and graphs and all that kind of stuff. So maybe for another time. Yeah, so there's a very specific moment for me, and that is when my graduate students started using Python and I was left in the dust. I was a postdoc. We were at Stanford at the linear accelerator there. We were doing an intense thing for physicists called beam time, which is where you essentially work full out for as long as you've got the beam, because it's very expensive, which is about 2 weeks in this case. And one of the tough things about being a postdoc is you have a supervisory role, and you have to expect your graduate students to do a bunch of magical things that you don't understand. And those were involving a lot of the tools. I mentioned Python specifically, that are right in the data science wheelhouse. And I realized I had sort of gotten a little rusty, shall we say. So I started looking into it, checking it out, and realized the just natural direction I was going was pulling me towards some of those data science principles, taking a lot of the skills I learned in physics, but applying them more broadly as opposed to keeping them focused. So that was sort of the seed that kicked it off. And then I guess in an extremely data science story, I got my first job as a data scientist off of Twitter. Someone had posted a job posting, which through the social media got my attention, and I grabbed it, and I've been doing it ever since. Oh yeah, I absolutely can do that. My passionate hobby outside of gaming, of course, is rugby. I coach the local men's club here in Charlottesville, the Virginia Rugby Football Club. It actually started as a university organization, not fully affiliated. It was the 60s, so everything was a lot looser back then. It grew out of the university, and then now the university has a club. We have a men's club in town, and there was actually a moment a few years ago when I had to fill out a questionnaire about what's your favorite place in Charlottesville, and I said the rugby pitch that we play our games at.